back to In the Middle of It. I'm Alexis.
I'm Will. Today we're talking about the first fruit of the Spirit that's listed in Galatians 5:22, which is love.
All right, so, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it can be one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
And so, what is love to you? When people say, what if someone asked you what's love, what would you say?
Well, first I'll tell you what we're conditioned to say or conditioned to think by, just the world around us. And the first thing I think pops into most people's minds is romantic love, right? Oh, I love you and gushy, all that good stuff. Valentine's Day type of love that, is really what's put in our face by media and everything. But the love we're talking about is what in the Greek manuscripts of the Bible is called agape love, which is unconditional, it's selfless, and it's sacrificial. That's what we're talking about.
So in the Bible, God is love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that he simply is love, but we're not God. We're in the world.
Right.
And so we're struggling with things. So what we're going to focus on today as far as love is how to love difficult people.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, I think we all have somebody, if not multiple people in our life that makes it hard.
Yeah, they could be coworkers, family, people at school, if you're in school, just people around us that can be difficult, and learning how to see those people the way God sees them and then love them the way that God loves them, even when we find it difficult to do.
I mean, it kind of comes easy with our kids, our spouse, maybe our parents. Like, love just kind of comes natural. Mm-hmm. But when you're dealing with a difficult person, and that could be somebody at work, mm-hmm. it could also be somebody in your family. And a lot of people might not want to admit that. Oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way about your family. But I think it is pretty common in families.
Sure. Because
families typically do spend a lot of time together, and you have all these personalities that can just clash. And we're in a world, especially with social media, where we see so many different people and what their opinions are, what their beliefs are, politics. And so we have to know how to love them outside of liking them. And I don't know how you feel about this, but do you feel like you have to like somebody in order to love them?
No, I don't. I don't think that at all. Because again, liking somebody is an emotional response to maybe shared interests or similar personality types or, similar opinions, that kind of thing. Those are the things that go into liking somebody. Whereas loving someone in the way that God wants us to love people is action.
Right.
It's not a feeling, it's an action. It's the way you treat somebody. It's the way that, the way you engage with them, and maybe encourage them or support them. It doesn't have to be, something that you do all the time with that. I mean, you have to love them all the time, but I'm saying you don't have to necessarily, if there's somebody that you don't like, but you're choosing to love them, sometimes you can do that with boundaries in place.
Right.
Right. But it shouldn't be something that you have to necessarily force and shouldn't come under obligation or compulsion. Right. It should be something that you choose to do freely.
So let's say at work, it might be a little easier to set those boundaries. Like, don't go to lunch with them. Don't go in the break room with them. Don't hang out with them after work. But what if you are in a setting, maybe a group setting of friends? You have multiple people in this group and it's 20 people, and say you clash with a couple of them, but you see them in this group. How do you make that work without it standing out? We should be able to coexist. I don't know if that's the right word, but it kind of is in that sense. Like, when you let your feelings become so overpowering that it might interfere with the ability to love them. Because when you're around people, and I've struggled with this, I can only speak for myself, and I'm going to use one of my ex-bosses as an example. It's one of the jobs I had after my dad, because I worked with my dad for 16 years, and I can't even think of one day where we just butted heads at all.
Right.
But I am someone that typically can do that pretty well because maybe my mental health, I don't know. But when I took that job right after dad, it was more for experience. It was photography is a hobby for me, but I thought this is an opportunity to kind of check off a box in my life because I always wanted to be like a midwife. And so there's this opportunity to take pictures of babies in a hospital. It's like, oh my God, not only do I get to like see the babies and be in that environment and kind of check off bucket list because I didn't become that. But I get to
But you still got to work with babies in the hospital.
I get to enhance my photography, and this is temporary. I know it is going into it. When I first started, I knew it was commission only. I had no standard. I had no expectation, so it was free going. Like, I got along with everybody. The lady that hired me, a little bit younger, and you could tell almost immediately we were a little different. But at first, it was okay. We talked. Her husband was in a band, and she would ask things about you, but I found out pretty quickly that we're not alike in a lot of ways.
Right.
And so the good thing is I don't have to see her all the time. She's like the regional manager. So she's all over the place. But when it came down to certain things, this is where I wasn't hired to be a regional manager. I was hired to be a photographer.
Right.
And she was new to being a regional manager. So she was like lead photographer getting an opportunity to be this area manager. And we all know that it's a big difference.
Sure.
So I come in there with more management operations experience, and she got to me, and I wish what I'm learning now I had known then and I could have applied it, because it sounds simple. Like, why couldn't you have just done that before? I don't know, until you really recognize it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when things started coming up, like the way she handled things or the way she communicated, it about drove me crazy.
Yeah,
and
it
I
rubs
let
you
it.
the wrong way.
I let it, though. I could not find that balance. And I do think this is an example where I could have just focused more on love her where she is, and just coexist, because you have to. But my mental health, I guess, anxiety, I don't know which one, it got so fixated on she's getting to me. And that part of my mental health that she's affecting, I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels.
So you let emotions in that instance.
Yeah,
you let your
emotions took
emotions
over.
get in the way of your ability to love this person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being that you had that natural boundary in place, that she wasn't in the workplace with you all the time because she had multiple sites she had to manage.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, what are some things you could have done differently to show love toward that person?
I could have just had grace for the fact that she isn't a regional manager, which I didn't know. She is, but she didn't have the experience. I didn't know right away that she was new to it. So the first encounter we had, her boss had to tell me, look, I know she needs training. She's new to this. After that is when I wish I would have practiced more of that grace for her. She was given this opportunity. It's a increase for her. It's a promotion for her. Have that grace for her. But there was just something in me, not that I thought it wasn't about I'm better than her. It was just that me that wants to fix it. But I know how to do this. I know how to communicate with the team. They're coming to me already, because it's just when you've done it, you've done it. It's not like, it's just what it is. If I could have just allowed myself to just step back, I love to help people, but that wasn't my job. And I would jump in a lot of times on the communication app that we had. And I just needed to know my place, and that, and just exercise that this is her spot. And I didn't want her spot because I wasn't there for that.
Right.
I wasn't going to get it anyway. But
you also wanted to see things done right.
I wanted things to be done a certain way because I do know operations. So it wasn't even that I was thinking I'm better than her. It was just, I know how we can do this better. And I kept putting that stuff in there, and where that might be okay sometimes, I think you have to know your place in it though too. Because it could look...
You can do those things. You can, if you have that experience, you can kind of try to suggest things, but you have to do it with a loving attitude, right?
Yeah.
And the difference, I guess, well, you tell me, were you suggesting those things out of love or out of frustration?
Frustration.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fair. That's fair, because I've been in the same positions where I have experience doing something.
Yeah.
And I see someone that has authority doing it a different way. And my choices are either, bite my tongue and just let it be and do it their way, which usually leads to frustration on my part. Or can I have a sidebar with this person and say, hey, I've been down this road. ultimately the decision's yours, but can I make this suggestion, and see if there's a better way to do this. Sometimes you're going to run into people that don't want to hear it. They want to do it their way. And that's the point at which you do have to just grin and bear it, because, part of loving is loving like God is being sacrificial. Now that doesn't mean I don't want that to get confused with letting yourself get walked all over.
Yeah.
Because if you do have principles and you do have standards, you don't want to compromise those.
No.
Because then you move from being loving in a sacrificial way to letting yourself get trampled.
Right.
You can still maintain your standards and work within the framework of maybe a boss that you find, difficult to communicate with and difficult to understand, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So 1 John 4:8, where God is love, it says, whoever does not love God does not know God, because God is love.
Right.
So if we, especially if we're Christian, we have to love one another. You cannot choose to hate someone. Now, you don't have to like somebody. And the one thing I wish that I was able to separate many times in my life is that. Because in my mind I thought, but that just sounds so bad. To not like someone sounds cruel, or it sounds bully-like. So I would just think, well, I have to fix it so that I like them. And there was this block in me that was like, you've got to fix it so you can like them. If I just accepted, you don't have to like them, but you do have to love them.
Yep.
Then it would have been easier for me. But I just grew up with, when you not liking somebody seems so cruel. And maybe it's because we abuse it as far as the way we use it.
Well, and there's a difference between not liking somebody and actively being antagonistic toward that person, right?
Yeah.
Just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean you have to be mean to them. You can still be cordial and be nice.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be their best friend.
Right.
That's when we confuse loving and liking somebody, we create an expectation of chemistry, right?
Yeah.
That, I'm a Christian, and maybe this person's a Christian too. We have to like each other. We have to be friends because we're both Christians, and we have to love each other. That is not necessarily the case.
Right.
Right. We can look into the book of Acts for that. When Paul and Barnabas were talking about going out on another ministry journey, and there was another guy by the name of John Mark that had kind of flaked on Paul on the previous ministry journey and went home early. Barnabas wanted to take him on this new journey with him, wanted to go on this trip, wanted to take John Mark. Paul's like, no, he's not reliable. I can't trust him. And they had a sharp disagreement about it.
Right.
So Paul and Barnabas for a while, and they ended up reconciling in the end, in years later, I think, but they didn't agree, and they kind of got into it with each other and decided, let's, for the sake of being able to maintain, a good working relationship in the ministry.
Yeah.
Let's go our separate ways. Barnabas, you take John Mark. Paul said he was going to take, I don't want to say it wrong. I don't remember who it was. He took somebody else with him. Right. And really what ended up happening through that is the word of God, the ministry, the gospel of Jesus spread further and faster because you really had these two guys that, they agreed, okay, hey, look, we're not agreeing on this. They agreed to disagree. They agreed to part ways in love. And again, like I said, they were able to reconcile years later. And I think even Paul, in one of his letters, and I can't remember where, I had to go back and look it up, but actually did end up having some good things to say about John Mark down the road, because John Mark redeemed himself, right?
Yeah.
So even in disagreement, and even in a season of not liking each other, these two guys were still able to, they were able to love each other through ministry and continue the good work of spreading the gospel, right?
Right.
So we don't have to necessarily be best friends with everybody.
When you get focused on that, when you focus on it too much, it takes your energy, and then you become angry because you're not going to fix them and they're not going to fix you.
Right.
So why do that? Why exhaust yourself in that way? And then you might find yourself gossiping. And I will say that because if there's something I don't understand, I get in that spiral loop that I've talked about with the mental health episode, and I need to understand it. And when I can't, your brain is looking for a solution. So I might go what I would call vent. And to me, it was venting because I don't want to like destroy someone's character, but it kind of is. You have to, in the simplest way, you have to look at it like, but that is what you're doing, because when you vent to someone else, you are still saying all these things to this other person, and they may be creating an opinion based off of you. And at some level, we're spending way too much time trying to understand or fix somebody, and we're just not going to. So I do think it's healthier just to say, you know what, maybe you don't even have to use the word I don't like them. You can just say, hey, we're different.
Yeah.
Because then you can set the boundaries. If you force it to work, you're going to end up in some worse situation.
Right. Not everybody is your cup of tea.
Okay, I'm going to use an example without names, but there's someone within this huge life circle that I've been in that comes in and out of your life just vague, but not vague. And I noticed that. I was like, this person in a whole different location, I can love them so different than when they're in my face all the time. All of a sudden, I could communicate with them and appreciate them, but the minute I was around them too much, I felt completely different. I started even thinking, maybe I don't even like this person.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a reality. Once we had too much connection, too much in each other's face, all of a sudden, like things that make us like
well, your personalities, don't mesh, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us can run into that. Some people may be more introverted and just want to, have a smaller circle, have more deep, meaningful conversations, one-on-one or in small groups. And some people are extroverted and they like to be loud and they like to, have a big crowd around them. And those two people don't necessarily jive all the time. Sometimes they can. And I think in small doses with each other they can. But when, the introvert is overwhelmed by the extrovert, it can be very socially taxing on the introvert. Social
battery is just depleted. And if I don't remove myself when that battery is like blinking, I don't know what's going to come out.
Right. You've got to set that boundary, to protect your ability to love that person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's been times that I've thought I'm such a bad person and I would punish myself and I didn't understand it and I would be mad. But I think if we can just make it simple, that it's okay. We're going to encounter people. And you know what? It's okay if they're in your family, because you don't have to have everything in common with them, but you do have to love them.
Yeah.
And love it's a verb, really. I mean, to me, it's an action. It's something that you should do, because as Christians, for sure, we are called to love one another. We don't have to like and hang out with everyone. So when you start forcing it, it's just not going to work.
But we can still celebrate
you
those
can
people's
celebrate
achievements.
those people and pray for them.
We can encourage them and we can pray for them and we can, we can hope for the best for them. Right?
Yeah.
And if they call us at 2:00 in the morning,
broke
down on the side of the road or crying because they just, experienced some, horrible thing in their life, we can be there for them.
Right. Because of love.
Right. Because we can love them. That doesn't mean we want to go have coffee with them every morning.
No.
So.
But, when we think of the greatest example of love in the Bible, it's Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
And so we're not required to be crucified for people. We're just simply called to just love them, pray for them, care about them. But I can honestly say, and I think it's mental health, that I did not always understand that. And so I would be in this spiral because I didn't understand it. And I was just constantly questioning what's wrong with me or what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
But now that I just, at 44, realize that it's okay to, I can show up at this job or this family gathering and I can sit with you, I can hang out with you, and if you start driving me insane, I can remove myself.
Yeah. Jesus removed himself a lot of times. He'd be surrounded by a crowd and he would take off and go somewhere by himself and pray. Right. And if you think Jesus liked everybody that he came across, how many times did he have some harsh words to say, he called people a brood of vipers. He told Peter, "Get behind me, Satan."
Yeah.
All right. Now, not to say he didn't like Peter, but he had some harsh words to say to people. But even amongst all that, all the times that he called people out like that, he still went to the cross for them.
Right.
Right? He still loved them and went to the cross and sacrificed himself for those people, right?
Right.
So we don't have to like everybody to love
You can
them.
kind of look inside your heart. And if I had looked inside my heart, I probably would have known the answer to it instead of focusing on what my mind is telling me.
Yeah.
Because any one of these people that maybe I struggled with as far as personality or getting along with them, if they had called me and they were an addict or something, or strung out on drugs, I would run to them immediately. If someone else was doing something to them or causing harm, I would absolutely defend them. So
Sure.
I think in my heart was telling me, you do love them. But for the longest time, I was so caught up on liking people.
Well, I think too, you were made to feel guilty sometimes about how you just may not get along with everybody on the same level. And I think there was a lot of guilt on you for feeling the way you felt.
Well, I think that's where we can go back to be careful who you talk to, because somebody else might make you feel like, yeah, you are wrong and God is not pleased with you. And then you go home and you're carrying that and you're simply sitting there with just something you don't understand. But now this person, they didn't know what they were doing, but they made you feel worse.
Yeah.
Because they're telling you, God's not happy with you. And that's not what the person really needed to hear, but maybe they didn't understand. So we need to go to God and ask him, if you don't know what to pray for, this is what's helped me lately. And I mentioned it in other episodes, is just pray, God, I don't know what this is, but it feels heavy and my heart is heavy. If it's a relationship thing, I just simply want you to reveal it to me so I can understand it. And if it's a relationship, you can ask him, God, help me to see others the way you do, because I've prayed that recently for myself and I see myself in this whole different light. So he can do that for you with other people. And when I think about right now, because today's the first day of our county going back to school, and we still have one daughter in school.
Yep.
And my heart's been heavy all day because I know that she doesn't love school and she has anxiety problems like I do. And I'm trying to desperately talk to her about how to handle that. And if somebody gets on her nerves, she's doing what I do. She's trying to understand them. And she lets it get to her and she lets it mountain up. And it's like, great, I'm glad I understand it better because I can talk to her. But she's not really getting the way I'm trying to explain it, and it breaks my heart because I don't want to see her battle with that. But our mental health, this is the thing, our mental health because I look at you and I think, I know people really get under your skin, especially maybe at work or something, but you don't have mental health struggles. So I think that's where you kind of thrive in how to handle it. Mine, I have to recognize, not for a crutch, but I have to recognize, well, this is triggering anxiety, or this is triggering your OCD thoughts or whatever.
Yep.
And what you have to also understand is not everyone is understanding their trauma. Like, a lot of us are walking around with trauma from childhood. And a lot of people think just because it's over, or it was the past, or they had forgiveness for that person, that it's all over. But what they're not recognizing is, just because you forgive somebody, that's the ultimate thing to do. It's not about remembering it so you can carry it through life as an excuse, but your brain was altered by whatever trauma maybe you were focused on. And it might have a lot to do with how you're acting out in your adulthood. And there's so many people I want to go up to, and I know that I can't, and say, you have trauma from your childhood. And if you went and just recognize that trauma, it's not that they're going to fix you, but if you could recognize it, you might understand maybe why you lose all these relationships, or why you keep losing jobs. Because that's the only way I have been able to understand some of mine, is to go to someone and say those things, recognize I have trauma. I'm going to be honest. I need to understand it so I can understand why my reactions are.
Well, the events that cause the trauma may be over, but the scars are there.
And you may not want to revisit it, but that's why I think therapy can be hard for people. Revisiting it can be hard, but they give you this cognitive type therapy, I guess, where they help you work on it when certain thoughts come to your mind. It sounds crazy, but they give you exercises and homework, and it really does work.
Well, you know what that is? It's called taking your thoughts captive, which is a biblical principle. Sorry, I stumbled over my words there. But the Bible teaches us to take every thought captive and submit it to the authority of Christ, right?
Right.
So that cognitive therapy you're talking about is whether your therapist is a Christian that's telling you to do that or not.
Mine was.
Yours was.
You don't have to have a spiritual therapist, but it is good for you if you can.
Yeah, but what they're teaching you is taking your thoughts captive.
Well, today I felt heaviness, and I did feel that anxiousness come over me, but through all this cognitive therapy that I'm doing, I was able to sit there and breathe through it. And I said, if the only thing you can accomplish today is get your daughter off on the bus, then that's all you're going to do. Because the reality is I don't have a job to get to. So why am I going to stress about that today? My other daughter's birthday's tomorrow. I want to make it special. It's a big birthday, but it's tomorrow. I was able to sit there, whereas before, my heart's racing. I feel uneasy. You can give power to that by like recognizing it, saying it out loud, or venting it to a friend. It might seem like that's the way to handle it, but it's actually not. So I sat there and I just focused on my breathing, and I focused on what I can control and the way God was seeing me in that moment, because there was a part of me that was like, the world thinks you're lazy today. And I had to keep telling myself, who cares what the world thinks? It only matters what Jesus thinks. And when we think about starting school, a lot of people are going back to school today, whether as a student or a teacher or an employee. I think some good things that you could take with you when you think about how to handle that. If you're walking into a situation like, great, that teacher's on my team again this year, or whatever it may be, some of the tools that you can, some cognitive therapy tools in your toolbox, the first thing you can do is pray for them. Because you do love them. And you want to pray, God, just recognize whatever it is that's a struggle between us, and help me cope with that today so that we can coexist. And remember, they are fighting battles. Everybody is fighting a battle.
Everybody's fighting
and
a
their
battle.
battle probably does look very different than yours, but they are fighting, and it will give you grace. Grace will come over you for them. And, separate their behavior from, just separate whatever their behavior is that sets you off from just who they are as a person. Like whatever their actions are, whatever their behavior is, just separate it from them. And if you can walk away from it, if you can walk away from it and focus on love as an action and not a feeling. Because if you focus on it as a feeling, it's gonna feel bad because this person makes you feel bad, or these people make you feel bad. Set healthy boundaries and just remember your own flaws, because we all have them. So when you're thinking like, why do they have to be so annoying, or why are they so extroverted, or why do they need so much attention, or why are they so, whatever it is that might be different than you, just remember, well, this is real to me, but I have flaws too. So let me just focus on my own flaws and not theirs, because theirs to me might be a flaw, but it isn't to them.
Right.
So what we see as a flaw maybe isn't a flaw to that person.
Yep. Yeah. And speaking of the, school starting back, and not only are kids going back to school, and teachers are going back, and, everybody's in high levels of stress. Even for me, going to work this morning, school starts, the traffic patterns change. There's people that are driving earlier in the morning than they have been for the last couple of months. And, maybe they're in a little bit of brain fog and they're doing crazy things on the road, and if you're one of the people like me that's, up and at 'em every single morning, the same schedule every day, and all of a sudden you're running into these people now that are, their schedule's changing, and it's going to be a little bit crazy for the next 2 weeks. I've got to have grace for those people whose schedules have changed. And
they're stressed too.
And maybe they're
trying to get to work too.
Maybe they're making my commute a little more difficult.
You're making theirs difficult.
I'm making theirs difficult too, I guess. And having grace for them because they're adjusting.
Right, yeah. And some of these bus drivers are learning their route for the first time.
Yeah, I passed a bus coming into the neighborhood as I was going out, and the bus was coming toward me. I was going the other direction, and there was a car parked on the curb in the neighborhood this morning in the lane that the bus was coming in. And it was at a point where one of us was going to have to wait for the other one. And of course, the first thought that came over my mind, because I was still tired and my caffeine I haven't even had it yet.
You got to get it first.
I know. So my first thought was, this bus is going to try to go around this car, and why does this person have to park on the street and blah, blah. And I stopped myself. I said, I don't need to go down that road.
Giving power to the
I
struggle
was,
of it.
it started there, and I quickly, was able to clamp down on it and take that thought captive and say, you know what? I don't know why this person's parked in the street. They have their reasons. I'm not going to worry about it. The bus stopped behind that car, and
and it's going to be over before you know it. And
in a span of about 5 seconds, the whole thing's over. And I could have, thought some choice things about the car parked on the street, or whether or not the bus was going to let me pass or not, or if I was going to have to wait on him or whatever. But none of that happened. I said, you know what? It's the bus's first day back. I'm sure he's stressed. I don't know why this person's parked on the street. I'm sure they have their reasons. I don't know what they are, but I'm just going to let it be. And it was over.
I mean, isn't it amazing though, or incredible that like the difference if you had chosen to just give in to those struggles?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Millie has helped me recognize mine the most because she takes after me in that way.
And I probably would have taken that frustration with me.
You would have taken it, and it would have escalated into the next problem.
And then the next car that might have done something inconvenient to me on my way to work would have just escalated. I mean, heck, there was an accident on 285 that backed up traffic all the way up 75 for me this morning I had to deal with.
Right.
I could have gotten upset about like why are people driving like idiots and crashing and whatever, but I didn't.
Right.
I was like, you know what?
I used to do that a lot.
I hope nobody was seriously hurt, and hope everybody else can pray everybody else can get to work when they need to get to work.
I mean, you kind of always been that way for the most part. It's me that has really struggled, and Millie being my daughter, I see it, and I find myself telling her, like, you were just giving power to all of this. I'm like practicing what I preach because I realized how often I did that.
Yeah.
If any little thing went wrong, it may have been my anxiety, but if I had recognized, hey, this is your anxiety, deal with the anxiety, I still could have handled it with that, holding your thoughts captive kind of thing. If I had just said, hey, it's already hard enough as it is, and maybe the anxiety part of it is real, but if you acknowledge it and you don't give in to that part of the struggle, then you're already feeling better because of that. You're making it worse when you give in to all of that and the thoughts.
And when we give into that kind of stuff and we just let those frustrations build, it makes it harder to love other people around us.
Yeah.
Because we're frustrated and I don't want to love this person. I don't want to love that person. Because you're frustrated.
Yeah.
And you've let those things pile up on you. And how can you show love to people around you when you're just stewing in aggravation inside, right?
Yeah.
It makes it difficult because you're letting your anxiety get heightened. You're letting yourself get exhausted from that stuff. You can't show love to people around you when you're feeling that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, love is pretty broad, but we're going to go ahead and close it out. So let's just remember to focus on how we can separate love from our feelings. And we don't have to agree on things, politics. We don't have to force a relationship beyond what we can handle. God loves us through all of our imperfections, so we can love others through theirs. Pray for that person because you do love them and you want good things for them. Don't pray that they will change, but just pray for them as a person and pray that God will help you cope with these people. And just remember, when we choose hate, you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah.
So you're the one suffering when you choose to have these feelings towards someone. They are not the one suffering.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, I'll pray us out. Father, we thank you for the way that you love us unconditionally, sacrificially, and we ask, Lord, that you can pour that love out on us and that overflows, and that we can pour it out on the people around us, especially the ones that we find to be difficult. Part of that is sacrificial for us to love them. So, Lord, let that love that you love us with pour out of us to those around us, and let us be able to love like you do, unconditionally, sacrificially, and have a heart to serve other people. We ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.